everyone. I'm starting chapter 7 of history. The name of the chapter is Changing Cultural Traditions. This is for class 11. Let us begin the chapter with the questions. The question is, how did the world appear different to the 17th century Europeans? Now the topic here, or the chapter here itself, it's all about a change. Okay, there was some change in culture, some traditions, some way of thinking, living, and all these things, the way they study. So we are going to study like what kind of changes really came or was visible to the people of 17th century. So when you compare from the 14th, that means from the end of this, okay, from the 14th to the end of 17th century, towns started growing in many countries of Europe. And then as a town grew, there were very distinct type of culture which was coming up, and this was urban culture. Townspeople, they started to think themselves that they are more civilized than the village people. Then towns, particularly like Florence, Venice and Rome, became the center of art and learning. Means here people used to come for studies. Now artists and writers were patronized or were given more importance by the rich and the aristocratic. Now the invention of printing was also a very important character, or we can say a factor for bringing some kind of change in the society or the thinking of the Europeans, because many books were printed now, and books was not only printed, it was also available to almost every class of people, many people, including those who are living in far towns or countries. Now religion also came to be seen as a very something different, where an individual can choose for himself. It was not must that you have to do this. The church was some main power or the decider of this era, we can say. Like whatever the church said, or the authority of the church said, people have to follow. But what happened is that after this development came, the church earth-centric belief was overturned. Whatever the church people, leaders were saying or telling, it was not believed, because scientists were there. And these scientists, they started to understand, or they started to tell people that solar system was there or is present, and new geographical knowledge was also given to the people. That is, in the solar system, when we talk about solar system, it is not the earth which is the center of the solar system, but the sun. Now according to the Roman Catholic or the church, they said the earth is the center and everything moves around the earth. But the scientists, they challenged this idea and they said no, the main thing is that the sun is the center and everything moves around the earth. And then there was also some kind of geographical knowledge which was overturned by these people. For example, they used to say that the earth is a flat area, right? Very flat area. So the scientists, they challenged this and they said no, the earth is not at all flat, but it is what? A sphere, right? Then geographical knowledge overturned the Europe-centric view that Mediterranean Sea was the center of the world. This was also one of the thing. Okay, so now you can see, as people of that time, they were so innocent, we can say. Innocent in what way? Because they believe whatever is told to them. So as it was said that since this is the middle, that means Mediterranean Sea is the middle of, or the center of the world, they just started believing it, and there was no challenge made before that. But after, or you can say at the end of the 17th century, people started challenging most of the ideas, most of the knowledge, most of the things which was written in Bible. And this is how the Europeans started to see the world. Okay, and a change that came in the environment. When you talk about environments, yes, basically the way of thinking, the way they live, the way they started to dress up, all these things started to change, and these are the things that they saw in the 17th century. The revival of Italian cities. This is our new topic. So here two questions arises in this topic. And the first question is, what changes helped in the revival of the Italian culture after the fall of the Western Roman Empire? So the first question is that, like, we are to study, or we have to see, like, what are the changes that really revived the culture of the Italian after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Okay, and the second question that arises from this topic is, like, how did Italian town come to a new life? So we have to see, like, why these questions arise here. First of all, we came to know that after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, those towns which had been politically and culturally the central part of, the important part of the Roman Empire in Italy, also ruined, or they also spoiled. Now no unified government was there during this or those times. Now Pope was not quite a strong person in European politics, although he was sovereign in his own state. For a long time, regions of the Western Europe were reshaped by the feudal relations and were unified under the Latin Church. Changes were being brought in Eastern Europe under the Byzantine Empire. Now Islam was creating a common civilization in further west. Now in one way, we are talking about, like, Christians were coming up, and the other side, that is on the western side, the Islam also was holding their ground. Italy was then divided, and then it became a very weak country. Now these changes helped in the revival of the Italian culture. Now how? The question is, like, when Italy is divided, and how the revival was possible, how the revival of Italian culture was possible. So because of that, our second question also is very much important. The second question from this topic is, how did Italian towns come to new life? Now once Italy was divided and became a weak country, and then it is said that helped in revival of the Italian culture. The reason is very simple. The expansion of the trade between the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic countries revived the ports on the Italian coast. Now see, the Italians, they are very weak now. They are not using the ports, but the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic countries, they start to use the Italian coast, and because they start to use the Italian coast, it revived the ports of Italy. Now from the 12th century, Italian towns started to play a central role when Mughals started to trade through Silk Route with China and Western European countries. Then these towns considered themselves as a group of independent city-states. Among these towns, Florence and Venice were republics. Many towns were court cities which were ruled by princes. Venice and Genoa were the two most important towns of Italy. Now they were very much different from other parts of Europe because the clergy and the feudal lords were not politically dominant. Bankers and rich merchants took an active part in the governing of the city. Now this helped the idea of citizen to emerge, or the idea of citizenship to emerge. Even when these towns were ruled by military rulers, the townspeople felt the pride in being citizens of the town. Now as we talk about all these things, the simple thing is that, like, as it failed to be a very powerful country, it was used by some other countries for their purpose. For example, two countries are in trade. In between lies Italy. So the people of the two countries who are in trade, they could not travel continuously from one place to another. In that case, they have to stop in Italy, and they have to use the ports, use the hotels, use the roads, or any type of communication facilities that is available in Italy. That is why the Italian culture revived. Okay, so now these people who are coming to Italy from different places, they could not demand like, give me this type of food or give me that type of food, right, or show me this different type of dresses. Instead, they were very much carried away by looking at the uniforms or the dress or any kind of things which is found in Italy, and thus they wanted to know more about Italy. Besides that, as we said, like these people, when these people like the traders, when they started asking about Italy, that was a moment when they started feeling like, yes, we have to keep the citizenship or the idea of citizenship awake or alive, and in that way they started to have more and more touch towards the Italian culture, and that is how the Italian culture was brought up or revived. Our next topic is universities and humanism. So for this, you take down a question. The question is, discuss the contribution of universities to the rise and growth of humanism. Now the question is asking us like, what were the basic role of the universities that help in the rise of humanism and also the growth of humanism. So as we go through the topic, we came to know that most of the universities in Europe were first set up only in Italian towns, or we can say first of all it was set up in Italian towns. Now from the 11th century, the universities of Bologna and Padua had been the centers of legal studies. It was so because commerce was the chief activity in these cities. So there was a demand or increasing demand for lawyers and notaries. Now these people wrote and interpreted rules and wrote agreements. Without these, trade on a large scale was not possible. Therefore, law was a popular subject of study. But there came a change in the study of law. It was studied on the context of earlier Roman culture. Now whoever studied law, it was not that they have to just read law, but they changed the way of reading. They have to study the law which was written during the Roman culture. Now this change, like the importance was given by, or the idea of change was given by one of the writer, that is Francesco Petrarch. Now he said that if anyone want to know about or want to best understood about the ancient or about the Roman style of living or Greek words or their way of living, rules, regulation, one should study or stress on the works of the ancient writer, so that he must understand, he must keep up with the correctness of the laws and all. So that is why he said that one should stress the works of ancient writers, and that should be studied thoroughly. Now this is Petrarch's way of telling like what is necessary for humanism to be a successful one. Then besides this, it is said that the meaning of new educational program was that a lot of things are there which must be learned, and these things cannot be given by religious teachings alone. Now we cannot just learn everything with the help of our religious way of studies. So because of that, they said educational programs are very necessary, and that is why they started a new educational programs. In new culture, it was labeled that whatever they are going to study will be known as humanism, and this was labeled by the historians of the 19th century. By the early 15th century, the term humanist was used for those teachers who used to teach poetry, grammar, then rhetoric, history and moral philosophy. Now this term humanist was not used for any other person who were dealing different subjects besides this. But very soon this idea or this ideology will change. The word humanist or humanities was derived from a Latin word humanitas. Many centuries ago, the word humanitas had been used by Roman lawyer and essayist Cicero, a contemporary of Julius Caesar, right, to mean culture. Now this humanism was called humanist culture. Now, these revolutionary ideas also attracted attention of many people in many different universities. Among these was a new established universities in Petrarch's own hometown of Florence. Till the end of 13th century, the city of Florence hardly became famous as a center of trade or learning. But this situation changed very quickly in the 15th century. The city of Florence had become or had come to be known very soon because of Dante Alighieri and Giotto. Now, as an artist, Dante wrote on religious books or themes, and Giotto painted lifelike portraits. Now, as they painted all these things, now people were more and more pulled towards this paint, and they like to study what is being written in those religious themes and all. Then very different things were drawn by Giotto's, and his portraits were also the stiff figures made by the earliest artists. Whenever this paintings were done, they will compare, and after comparing they find that their painting, means Giotto's paintings, were very different than the others. Why it is different? Because it depicts something. Okay, it depicts something. It has got different way of presence. It has got different way of connecting people. That is what it was different. Then from then on, the city developed as an intellectual city and a center of artistic creativity in Italy. Let us move on to our new topic. The topic is the humanist view of history. So under this you can take down a question. The question is, how did humanists differentiate between Middle Ages and modern age? So here what we will see is that humanists were of the view that they were giving new life to the citizen or the civilization after centuries of darkness. They believed that after the collapse of the Roman Empire, a dark age had begun. Later, scholars also followed them and without raising any question assumed that a new era or a new age had begun in Europe from the 14th century. They used the term Middle Ages for 1000 years onwards. They had different types of names given to all this era. Now, as I said, they use the term Middle Ages for 1000 years after the fall of Rome. They argued that the church had completely controlled the minds of people. So all the learning of the Greeks and Romans had been washed away. The word modern was used by humanists for the period from the 15th century. Now, when you go through the chart which is given in the book, you can see that one, the way it was divided, or the time, the period where humanists have divided. Okay, so you can see from 5th to 14th century, this period was called as the Middle Ages. From 5th to 9th century, it was known as Dark Ages. Again, from 9th to 11th century, it was called the early Middle Ages. Then 11th to 14th century, the late Middle Ages, and 15th century onwards, it was known as the Modern Ages. So when you see the timing or when you see the dates, don't get confused. These are all about the way how humanists have divided and how the later scholars also went through it. Now, recently what happened was that historians started to question this division. They were asking like, how could this be correct? Now, with more research which was done, whatever evidence is found about Europe in this period, scholars are increasingly they are reluctant to make sharp divisions between centuries. They said we cannot agree to this type of centuries or division of centuries in between of being culturally vibrant or otherwise. Means they can't accept to this division of periods by the scholars of the past. It seems very unfair to level any period as the Dark Ages. That is why the historians, that means the present day historians, they do not accept this theory. So after the division of time and naming the ages or naming some centuries, there was some controversy regarding like whether it is correct to name any century as dark ages or not. But then the same thing we will be studying, and then we will see that how some of the writers or contributors have contributed to the world. Now in this case we'll be talking about the Arabs, and these Arabs also, what do is they read some of the books which was written by the Romans and Greeks, and then they have translated it into Arabic. And was it very useful? And that is what we are going to study. Now the question that you can write from the topic itself is describe the Arabs' contribution in the field of science and philosophy. So here the first thing is that the writings of Greeks and Romans were not being familiarized by monks and clergy through the Middle Ages, right? These things, the making it familiarized was exactly done by some other people, and these people were the Arabs. So the credit goes to the Arab, and we can be in debt, or the Europeans can be in debt to Arabs for all these type of works, because in the 14th century many began to read the translated works, and these translated works are basically done by the Arabs. These people, that means the Arabs, translated the works of Greek writers like Plato and Aristotle into Arabic, and many of them they could read Arabic, and because of that, the work of Plato, the work of Aristotle could be read. Now for Arab, or in Arabic, Plato was known as Aflatun and Aristotle was known as Aristu. Now while some European scholars, they could read books, and when they read books, now they are reading exactly the Arabic translation of Greek books. Now Greek scholars also, they started to translate works of Arabic and Persian scholars, so that whatever books which are transmitted or which are translated can be given to other Europeans. And these were works of natural science, means what they translated was on these subjects: natural science, mathematics, astronomy, medicine and chemistry. Then some of the writers like Ptolemy's, Alchemist carries the Arabic definite article al, which brings out the Arabic connection. Now al-Magist, now it means these were the books which were also translated by many Arabic writers. Now carries the Arabic definition of al, which brings the Arabic connections, as it says. Now among the Muslim writers who were the part of this, who were regarded as a man of wisdom in the Italian world, was Avicenna in Latin, and then this Arab physician, or an Arab physician and philosopher of Bukhara in Central Asia, and another one is Al-Razi or Razesh. Now these are the author, or he was the author of the medical encyclopedia. Another person who was very famous was Ibn Rushd or Ibrush. Now he was an Arab philosopher of Spain, and tried to resolve the tension between philosophical knowledge, falsafa, which is known as in Arabic, or falsaf, and religious beliefs. That means he wanted to create a kind of clarity between the tension of understanding the philosophical understanding of philosophical knowledge and the religious life. Now his method was adopted by the Christian thinkers. Now as you can see, most of the things, or most of the writers' names which we come across, they are all from Arabic background. That means they have really done the commendable work, and from those works only we started to get different types of knowledges, because they did not work on one field. As you saw, there were so many subjects they worked on. They had translated science, mathematics, astronomy, medicine and chemistry. Besides that, they have their own writers who are very good enough in different field. So humanists reach many people in different ways. Though the curriculum in universities continued to be dominated by law and now medicine and theology, now humanist subjects slowly began to be introduced also in schools.